Hello and welcome to Left, Right, Center. I'm Sean Boyd. It is one of the top races in the country, and we had the candidates for Congressional District 8 right here in studio for a debate just a few minutes ago. I asked them about the cost of living, health care, abortion, and one of the top two issues this election, immigration.
Have to make sure that we're fixing this system for folks that want to come here either to become citizens or to work, as you said, in our economy without perhaps becoming citizens. We also have to empower our law enforcement to be able to deport those folks that are in our countries and causing and committing other crimes. My opponent has voted to prohibit law enforcement from even being able to coordinate with immigration and customs to have those violent folks in our communities deported.
What we need to do is to look at a balanced approach that secures the border, that creates a legal pathway for citizenship to address worker shortages, but that also makes sure that we're looking at people like dreamers, et cetera, and legalizing their status.
Joining me, our analysts, Republican Dick Wadhams, Democrat Mike Dino. So I'm going to start out with a general question. Did you sense any winner or loser here? Mike?
No, I thought it was pretty even-handed. I mean, I think, as Dick said, you know, they may have needed another half hour to really get at it, but I think it was very substantive. And, you know, they went through, you know, the questions you asked, I think they were able to answer them in a way that voters could clearly understand, you know, what they stood for.
Dick?
Yeah, you can tell she's an incumbent congressman. And I say that positively because she has a grasp of the issues from her standpoint. But Gabe Evans is no slouch. I mean, he's been in the state legislature. He's very articulate and very knowledgeable. So I thought they both did well. So
on immigration, one of the things that she has really not wanted to answer is whether she would support defunding ICE and Border Patrol. She had signed a letter 3 years ago saying she wanted that to happen. So I pressed her on that, and she said no more, that she's backed off that. Good decision with immigration being a top issue in this race right now. But what she didn't answer is whether she would deport anyone, any criminals, which I found interesting.
Well, you know, I think one of the things that I thought, you know, what she said was, you know, Republicans tend to use this as a political issue but have no intention of solving it. And I think, you know, you can go back to when Senator Michael Bennet was on the Gang of Eight, and they had a pretty good plan, to today, where the president, the former president, blocked the deal in Congress.
Right.
And I think until you actually get some solid legislation with language in front of people that outline what's going to happen, I think it's hard to hold anybody's feet to the fire on the Republican or the Democratic side on what they're going to do.
It has become a wedge issue that both sides use to appeal to their bases.
Yeah, but the bottom line is this, is that you can criticize Trump for a lot of things, but that border was stable while he was president because he did implement the Remain in Mexico policy, and it worked. And the first thing that Biden did when he got inaugurated was to repeal Remain in Mexico. And we've had a problem ever since. And Frank, the problem for people like Caraveo is that they ignored this for years. And now all of a sudden we need a balanced approach. And they're about 3 years too late.
So one of the, I asked Caraveo about mass amnesty, which a lot of Democrats support. I asked Evans about mass deportation, which a lot of Republicans support, and whether there are exceptions. And it was interesting, you did hear in the sound that we just ran that he does support some exceptions because this would be a huge crush to our workforce if we just, and I don't even know how that would happen, but began mass deporting people.
Yeah, you could destroy American agriculture if you deport every worker from...
and yet Trump says that's what he plans to do.
And I think that's where both sides are so dead wrong. Mass amnesty and mass deportation are both wrong, and they won't work.
And there is a middle ground. I think the problem is we got to run, you know, the Congress has to run every 2 years for re-election, and we're in these cycles where they don't get to a bottom line of actually passing anything of substance.
Right. Well, if immigration is a flashpoint, so too is abortion in this race. Caraveo went after Evans, saying his position has not been consistent.
Years ago, when he was running for the state house, I have looked at the survey myself, and there is a question asking, do you support banning abortion for every instance other than the life of the mother? And he marked support. Therefore, incest and rape, He doesn't seem to have included any exceptions for that. Now that he's running for Congress and he knows that public opinion is against him, he's trying to reverse his opinion.
So I've been very clear on my position. I do not support a national abortion ban. I support exceptions for rape, incest, for life of the mother. And my voting record since day one has borne this out. Every year at the state legislature, we've had Republican bills that would have infringed upon those exceptions. And I bucked my own party. I was one of only 5 Republican legislators that did not sign on to or support those bills. So since day one, my position has been absolutely clear.
You know, it is interesting. She talks about his position changing on abortion. He talks about her position changing on immigration. And both of them, I mean, he did fill out that survey. I've seen the survey. He did say exceptions only for the mother's life in that case. Since he started running, he has been consistent about the 3 exceptions. But you got to wonder where voters are going to come down on this. There are some voters who are going to say the abortion thing is more important to me. That's what I'm voting on. And there are others that are going to say immigration is more important, which is, you know, probably why this race is as close as it is.
Right.
Well, and I think the thing that you have to keep in mind is we have a ballot issue, a constitutional amendment, 79, that is on the ballot. And I'm curious to see how that affects the voters, in particular the 8th, and maybe younger women who may be attracted to the ballot for that reason, and maybe for the fact that, you know, it's a big issue Democrats are pushing. So I think that gives it maybe a little more special closer look on how those two might be connected. I don't doubt immigration for Republicans is a big national issue, and in the swing states.
Yeah, and while she's changed her position on the defunding of ICE and Border Patrol, there are going to be some who are going to say, nah, I don't like that.
Yeah.
What's interesting about Evans and abortion is, and I pointed this out during the debate, he doesn't want to say whether he is okay with exceptions at some other point during the pregnancy. There are some Republicans who say, you know, before viability.
Right.
And so I pressed him on that, and he said, well, the Supreme Court has sent it back to the state. Colorado's made its decision. But I was asking him where he stands on this, and he just doesn't. And that's curious to me. It always is in races when Republicans don't have good answers for this issue that comes up all the time. Personhood. We've had it 3 times in 6 years. You know, you would think he would have a good answer for this.
Well, Republicans are vexed by this issue, Sean, but Democrats are too. I mean, it always amazes me when Democrats refuse to answer the question about 9th-month abortions. And they say, oh, no, we're not in favor of those. Well, everything they introduce and sponsor provides for 9th-month abortions and for public funding of abortions. And they never want to answer the question. So you're right. I mean, he did squirm a little bit during that. But she won't come to grips with her position either.
And it will be interesting to see where voters come down on Amendment 79, which not only puts it in the Constitution, if it only did that, I think that thing sail through overwhelming support. But the fact that it now puts taxpayer funding, you know, overturning an amendment that is in the Constitution right now, I'm not sure where people are at with that. And I have pointed out in an explainer that I did. These are 2 very different issues here.
And we're not the only state that has an abortion rights issue on it, too.
I mean, there's
Florida,
10, 12 states out there that
so
do.
it is a, you know, and people have been saying to Vice President Harris, she's got to play that up in the closing days more than she has been.
Yeah, and I think with Caraveo, it's been difficult because she does support taxpayer funding for abortion, and it's kind of difficult right now to figure out where Colorado is at. You know, how much has it changed? How much has it moved?
And remember, we did have a Senate race here where an incumbent went down because he was a one-issue abortion candidate, Mark Udall, when Cory Gardner.
It was 10 years ago.
It was 10 years. You're right. No, it's changed, Mike. You're right. You're right. But on the other hand, I think Democrats can overplay this issue on the public funding thing, like we talked about.
Right. Well, the cost of living may be the top issue this year. Vice President Kamala Harris supports price controls for groceries, rent, and medications. I asked Caraveo where she stands on price controls.
It's not necessarily controlling prices. It's looking at what the factors are, making sure that we're applying pressure to companies and making sure that the government is doing all it can to bring down the bottom line for people.
I know you did support a bill at the Capitol that set up a board that did control the price of some drugs, but you don't support that at the federal level.
I think that for medications, it's very different, but I would not do that across the board in other sectors.
Now, former President Trump argues tariffs would help with prices. He wants a 10 to 20% tariff on all imports. I asked Evans if he thinks that's a good idea.
For countries like China, we have to make sure that we're using every tool at our disposal to make sure that they are playing by the international rules and that our corporations and companies, our job makers here in the United States, have a level playing field to compete. For the rest of the international economy, for folks that are trying to follow the rules, I'm generally a free trade person.
You know, it's interesting, economists, I noted this during the debate, on both sides say neither of these things are good ideas, right. Neither price controls nor tariffs. And history has shown this. You know, it's going to drive up prices and lead to shortages. So it was interesting to see where they're kind of like, you know, I mean, Caraveo is medication only, it sounded like, where she was at. And then with Evans, China only.
Right.
I wonder where CD8 is.
Yeah, I liked how they were nuanced, though. I mean, I think you were trying to get more out of them in terms of, you know, price controls. I think it is kind of foolish. I got an economics degree in college. I haven't used it to any extent, as you can tell.
Very smart.
But nonetheless, I mean, you know, that's kind of pie in the sky stuff. But I think people do expect it for medication. And I thought Evans was really keen on the fact that, you know, he singled out China. And I think that's what it'll come down to when we see tariffs.
Yeah, I thought Gabe did a very good job on this issue, singling out China and talking about tariffs. Overall, he's a free trader, and I think that's a good position to be at.
But I thought Caraveo did a pretty good job on the price controls as well. You know, we saw her really warm up during this debate.
She did, but you know, Sean, the fact is the government putting pressure on companies, that's a de facto price control. Because, I mean, if they're issuing, if the government by coercion and threat is telling companies to lower prices, well, that's what's going to happen.
I think the Biden administration did meet with stores like Target and say, hey, can you bring down some of these prices here? You know, people are suffering.
Well, and the reality is you know, on the presidential side, you know, a slew of economists have come out against, you know, are saying that, you know, Trump's plan will increase inflation.
Yeah, that's, that's right.
And both of them will increase the debt.
Yeah, if you want to believe economists.
But the candidates also clashed over energy. I asked them about the unprecedented demand for electricity that has led to concerns about blackouts and higher prices.
2018, the voters of Colorado spoke on this. There was a ballot proposition that said, do we mess with how oil and gas is produced or leave it alone? 57% of Colorado voted, popular vote, leave it alone. Less than 4 months later, my opponent passed that same thing anyway. She didn't listen to the will of the people then. She's continuing voting that way in Congress, and it's costing the district billions of dollars.
What that bill did, it was exactly what my opponent is talking about, balance the needs of local municipalities so that they can make their own decisions about whether to continue fostering oil and gas production and how to balance that with health, the health and safety of their communities. Deciding whether it should be within 500 feet of a hospital or a school or not. That's what Senate Bill 181 did. And the oil and gas industry in the 8th District, in my own district, continues to thrive.
I think some in the oil and gas industry would take issue with that, especially when you're talking about Adams County.
That's for sure, yes. No, I think that I thought Gabe made a great point that the people voted by 57% to reject those controls. The legislature comes back in and they pass that bill, the very same thing the people said they didn't want. I thought that was a great, and by the way, a lot of the energy produced in northern Colorado is in Weld County outside the 8th Congressional District, not in her district. I think she misrepresented that.
Well, but the thing is that Colorado, I think, has really tried to legislate against oil and gas development in urban areas.
Right.
And so I do think in Weld County the commissioners have been very prudent in making sure that oil and gas production has happened outside the urban areas, and that's why we're not seeing it in our urban area in the Denver metro. The other thing is I heard Caraveo say is that, you know, she's all of the above for energy development.
Right, and I did ask Evans about that, given this scarcity of electricity that we're looking at right now, in part due to electrification, but also all these data centers, AI data centers that are going up. But I asked him, you know, do we continue to push to meet those greenhouse gas goals? And he didn't talk about that, didn't he?
No, but it's a legitimate question, and I'll tell you what, we are going to have blackouts at some point, brownouts, and it's going to raise the issue. Did we do too much to eliminate coal, for instance? Are we not doing enough to bring in nuclear? Because the environmentalists do not want either one of those.
Yeah.
And we're going to pay for that.
We'll see how big of an issue energy is
Yeah.
in this race, especially in CD8,
Sure.
where you do have a large presence of energy. But I do think you also have people who are, you know what, I really support clean energy. I want jobs, you know, in oil and gas, and I don't want it banned, you know, but I also, I want to move toward those greenhouse gas goals.
Yeah, and as you know, our legislature's kind of made a truce this last session.
Right.
You know, we're going to obviously get some fees from the oil and gas industry for transit, but they've called a timeout for the next 4 years in terms of going after legislation or ballot initiatives that'll be onerous to the industry.
We'll see how long that lasts.
Well, it's only 4 years, Dick. Only 4 years.
Yeah.
It'll be here before we know it.
That's true.
This election can't get here soon
Yeah,
enough.
it seems like it'll take 4 years.
Yeah. This will be a close one, I think. I think this
Yes,
one is
it
going to
will.
be, I mean, polls show it's neck and neck. So, and it could decide control of
Yes,
the
it
U.S.
could.
House. So there'll be a lot of eyes on Colorado on election night. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching Left, Right, Center. We'll see you next time.